Welcome to the non-dual lectionary for the third Sunday of Easter in Year A. We have this week the reading from Luke on the road to Emmaus. This was part of the Easter reading for Year C, so I will link that video in the discussion, but I think we've got some cool things to talk about that we didn't really talk about last year too. So let's get to it. It's Luke chapter 24, verses 13 through 35. Now on that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem, and talking with each other about all these things that had happened. While they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself came near and went with them, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. And he said to them, "What are you discussing with each other while you walk along?" They stood still, looking sad. And one of them, whose name was Cleopas, answered him, "Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who does not know the things that have taken place there in these days?" He asked them, "What things?" They replied, "The things about Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how our chief priests and leaders handed him over to be condemned to death and crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. Yes, and besides all this, it is now the third day since these things took place. Moreover, some women of our group astounded us. They were at the tomb early this morning, and when they did not find his body there, they came back and told us that they had indeed seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they did not see him. Then he said to them, "Oh, how foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have declared. Was it not necessary that the Messiah should suffer all these things and then enter into his glory?" Then, beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them the things about himself in all the scriptures. As they came near the village to which they were going, he walked ahead as if he were going on, but they urged him strongly, saying, "Stay with us, because it is almost evening, and the day is now nearly over." So he went in to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, blessed and broke it, and gave it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. They said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he was talking to us on the road, while he was opening the scriptures to us?" That same hour they got up and returned to Jerusalem, and they found the 11 and their companions gathered together. They were saying, "The Lord has risen indeed, and he has appeared to Simon." Then they told what had happened on the road and how he had been made known to them in the breaking of the bread. So I actually think this last section here is both pretty cool and kind of is the biggest problem in Christianity now. And let's talk about that a little bit though. So I talked about this a little last year, but what it's this is this neat story, right? Um where what we often experience, if we're on, you're interested in spiritual things, right? And sometimes, as part of that, you can kind of get glimpses, right, of that realization or recognition. But the separate self, the psychological self, puts it back together again and makes it into an experience that it has and all that. But we still recognize something's there, right? Um, and I think it's very common, right? I know I've experienced this as well, but it's very, very common that, two things related. One is that we find that a particular teacher or teachers opens this up especially for us, right? And then two, we take that and we start to associate that teacher with the thing itself, right? That like both that we need the thing from we need the teacher for the experience, for the realization, right? On the one hand, and on the other, and this is where I'm going to get at here, that the realization itself comes from the teacher. Even so much that there's, guru relationships in the East of gurus that are no longer alive, right? And one way to read that is like, oh, it's just a recognition, the guru is the representation of the true nature of all things. And whoever it is, alive or dead, that opens that up for you, great. Absolutely. But another way of that, right, is it can turn into like guru worship. And it can be that even this person that's no longer with us, right, they are the source of everything that I'm experiencing, right? Um, it's that like that the realization becomes from them, no matter where it happens, right? And so here we've got a couple cool things in both directions, right? And it becomes a problem though too, I think, the way we've dealt with it. The first is they have this experience, and when they recognize what it is, right? They well, let's back up, right? I think one of the things we can see here is that in the first section especially, right, about he was a prophet mighty in deed and word before God and all people, right? They recognize, right, in Jesus's teacher that these realizations, these recognitions, they got that through Jesus or in the presence of Jesus, right? Being around Jesus opened it up to them in a way that they didn't experience otherwise as easily. And then now Jesus is gone, right? Jesus died. And yet they have the same experience or some similar experience later, right? And in fact, when they kind of recognize that they have the experience, verse 31 here, right? Then their eyes were open, they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. So as soon as they recognize the experience and they kind of instantly associate it with Jesus, then he's gone. And the cool thing, what we could do with that, right, is say, look, it's not Jesus that is the experience, right? He vanishes as soon as they recognize it. There's something else going on. It's not the person himself that brings this, right? It's more that they have associated having the experience with Jesus, right? But the vanishing, that's the clue. The vanishing there is like the hint that like he's not necessary for it, right? He's just opening up people to what is, as great teachers do, right? They have either a presence about them or a specific teaching, something, being around them opens things up, but it's not the teacher that is the source, right? All they're doing is serving as something like a guide. And that's the vanishing, right? Like when the teacher vanishes, what is still remains, which is just gorgeous. But what do we do with this, right? And it starts even right here in this. There's this oral tradition, right? Before it becomes a written tradition. Luke didn't write down immediately the same day. There's oral tradition for decades before Luke writes this gospel, right? So in the context of the Hebrew scriptures, which we see in the first part again, in the context of what comes later, it becomes, right, that um, any experience like that is Jesus, right? And in fact, the fact that these people that had gathered around him were continuing to have experiences after Jesus is gone becomes the evidence that he had risen. Does that make sense? Um, and it's not necessary, right? It's not, again, like I think uh, a better interpretation, right? Because it opens up everything to all of us, is that they're they're relating the experiences they're having when he's no longer there with the experiences they had when he was there, right? And just noting like, hey, this is this is similar. This is kind of the same thing. We're actually being opened up to what, true nature, what really is, whatever you want to call it. But instead, what starts to happen in the book here and what happens in the tradition, right, is those experiences become linked together. Great, but they start to see Jesus as this as the experience, right? Not just opening it up to them, but as the experience itself. So, in the oral tradition, as years go on, it becomes not just we had, some flashes of recognition and realization even when he was gone, even after he had died, right? It also becomes we had these flashes of recognition and realization after he had died, and so he wasn't really gone. He had risen from the dead, just like, and again, in the context of the Hebrew scriptures, that makes a lot of sense how you would fit that together. But now, then today, we get this belief system, an intellectual assent system, right? About, well, Jesus actually came back from the dead or not, which does not have anything to do with opening up to true nature or the recognition of, no self. That, again, in this lesson, and the scripture's full of it, that's what we're all talking about. Jesus opened up that for people, And then now, even when he's gone, people are opening up to that as well. And even today, of course, people are opening up to that as well. In the Christian tradition, in other traditions, it doesn't really matter, right? Because fundamentally, they're opening up to what is, and what is now and always was and will be. And whether we associate that with Jesus or not doesn't really matter. But like any good teacher, he opened them up to what is. Um, and still can, right? To those of us today who can, who are lucky enough, or who see in these teachings or any other teaching, right, that this is what's going on.